Welcome back to another TBR jar picks my reads for the month. Just like last time, I will have all of the TBR jar prompts down below in the description so that you know exactly what we are picking from. November just feels like a cozy month to me, so I want to read more fantasy and fantasy romance books because I feel like that's perfect for the fall and winter. I did have to reorganize the cart since last month because of course I bought more books. So these top two shelves are mainly fantasy and fantasy romance books, and then the bottom shelf is horror and thriller books. There's a lot of books on this cart that I am very excited to get to soon. So I have a feeling this month is going to be a very good one. I'm thinking we'll do 6 or 7 books again. So let's just choose our first prompt. Our first prompt is a book with black on the cover. I feel like that is like half this cart. We have a lot of options. Since I said I want to do more fantasy and fantasy romance, we will choose from one of these top two shelves, but I have like 2 or 3 that are kind of standing out to me. So these are our 3 options for a book with black on the cover. First, we have Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Roerich. This is a fantasy romance book that takes place in the same universe as the Legacy series. I've read the first 2 books in the Legacy series by this author, and they were both 5-star books for me. Like, I absolutely love that series. It's quickly becoming my #1 favorite dark fantasy romance series of all time. And because I love that book so much, and I really enjoy Melissa K. Roerich's writing, I've been wanting to pick up this series, and hopefully I love it just as much. Then we have A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark. This is the first book in the Kingdom of Lies series. I don't know much about this book. It's something about like a fae makes an alliance with a mercenary, and then something happens. I have no idea what, but I've heard pretty good things. This is short for a fantasy romance book, which personally I prefer a more chunky fantasy romance book. Like 600 pages plus is my jam for this genre. So I don't really know what to expect from this, but I did pick it up upon recommendation, so I'm hoping it's good, but not really sure. Lastly, we have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is an anticipated 5-star read for me. It is a fantasy romance book. I believe it came out, was it the beginning of 2024 or in 2023? I don't even know that much about this book other than it's fantasy romance and there's like dragons, but I don't know why, but something in my soul is telling me I'm gonna absolutely love this book. And so this has been very, very high on my priority list for reading. And so this might be our pick. Let me think. I'm not really in the mood to read A Court This Cruel and Lovely. I don't know, it's just not really the vibe. So I think we're gonna put this one back. So we're down to Lady of Darkness and When the Moon Hatched. These honestly have very similar color themes. It's like black and blue. I think we're gonna go with When the Moon Hatched. I have such a good feeling about this book, and so I really want to get to it this month. I've been wanting to read this for a couple months now, but I've been waiting until the hardcover came out. And so since I finally have the hardcover, I think it's time to finally read this. I'm hoping I love it as much as I think I'm going to. I've heard very mixed things, but just like I said, something in my soul is telling me this is going to be 5 stars. So I guess we will finally see this month. Time to pick our second prompt. Cover with your favorite color. My favorite colors are pink and blue, but like really light pastel pink and blue, which I don't think we have an option for that. So we'll just do normal pink and blue, which doesn't leave us with much again. I honestly think if we're going with fantasy and fantasy romance, I think that only leaves us with one option. So our one option for this prompt is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, which honestly, this is kind of perfect because I have been wanting to read this for a few months now. It's been on my TBR for a while now, but I just keep putting it off. But I have heard incredible things about this. It is a fantasy book with an older female lead. The main character is a pirate, and I know there's like a very small romance subplot, but I'm just very excited to finally read this and see if it lives up to the hype. We have one fantasy and one fantasy romance book so far, and so I think we're off to a very good start. Let's pick our third prompt. Next book in a series. This is a good one. There's a lot of series I've been wanting to continue, so let's see which one we should choose. We could do Iron Gold. We could do Well of Ascension, Children of Fallen Gods, Royal Assassin, Glint by Raven Kennedy. Oh, there's a lot. Okay, let's pick our top 3 and then we'll narrow it down from there. Okay, I picked my top 3 options. We have Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy. I don't know why, but something about the Realm of the Elderlings feels very cozy and wintry to me. So this feels like it would be a very good November book. Then we have Glint, which is the second book in the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. This is a dark fantasy romance book that is a King Midas retelling. And I told myself I would read the first 2 books in this series before I decide if I want to continue with this series or not. And so I do want to read this before the year's over. I just don't know if I want to read it in November or if I want to wait until December. Lastly, we have Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is the 4th book in the Red Rising saga, which has quickly become my favorite series of all time as of currently. And I keep putting off this book, but I keep saying I'm going to read it. So I think it's time to finally read this. I'm very excited to get back into this world, and I'm very curious to see where the story goes since the first trilogy. This is the first book in the second trilogy, and I hear it's a lot darker and heavier than the first trilogy. So I'm a little bit nervous, but I am so excited, and I'm glad that we are finally going to read this book. All right, we're halfway done, and we have some fantastic picks so far. So let's pick our next prompt. A book with spice. Okay, so another fantasy romance book. Okay, I know which books are fantasy romance, but I don't really know which ones are spicy. I think Glint is supposed to be a little bit spicy. Children of Fallen Gods, I don't think that's going to be spicy. The first book, Daughter of No Worlds, was not spicy at all. So I have a feeling this one is not going to be either. Okay, there's one book I know for sure is spicy because when I bought it on Amazon, it was like steamy fae romance. So steamy means spicy. So it looks like we're reading Court of Blood and Bindings by Lizette Marshall. This is the first book in the Fae Isles. I think there's currently 5 books out, I think. I could be wrong, but I have heard pretty good things about this. I don't really know what to expect going into it other than it is spicy. So I'm hoping it is a fun time. I think it will be good as just like a fun palette cleanser in between like heavier, bigger fantasy books. Like after Iron Gold, I think this will be very good. So I'm excited to finally read this, and we will see how spicy it is. I honestly have not read very many spicy books, so I'm very curious to see how I like it. Okay, I think we'll choose 2 more books for 6 books total because we have a couple chunkier books, so I think 6 will be a reasonable amount for November. Let's just pick our next prompt. Our next prompt is Standalone book. Okay, I think we might have to choose something other than fantasy and fantasy romance because most of those are series. I honestly have no idea what I want to do for this prompt. Should we do a thriller or should we do a horror book? I don't really know. Okay, I think I have 2 that might be good. So first we have Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is a horror thriller book. I heard this is one of his better books. I've never read a Riley Sager book. I hear he always does like a plot twist at the end. So I'm very curious to see if I like his writing. And I thought this would be a good place to start. I think this is just like a haunted house book, which I think will be good for a cozy November book. And also this will be good to break up in between all the fantasy and fantasy romance books. Then we have His and Hers by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller book. Basically, this woman is murdered and then you get both his and hers perspectives. And so I think you're just trying to figure out like who did it and who's telling the truth. So I think this would be like a really fun, fast-paced read. But I think we're gonna go with Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This feels more like the vibe for November, and I really wanna read a book by this author and see if I like it. And for horror books, I do love a haunted house story, so I think this will be a good pick. Time to pick our final prompt. Our final prompt is book by an author you've already read. Okay, so that'll probably be another sequel in a series, which is good because I need to work on actually finishing series. I'm thinking we'll do another fantasy romance book because that's what I've been most into recently. Okay, we have 2 options. First, we have Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. This is the 2nd book in the War of Lost Hearts. I read the first book like 2 or 3 months ago now, and I really enjoyed it. It was like a solid 4 stars. This is a very plot-heavy fantasy romance book. The mailman character is fantastic. Like, he's the sweetest mailman character I've read so far. So I've been really meaning to continue on this series, but I keep putting it off for some reason. Then again, we have Glint by Raven Kennedy, which is the 2nd book in the Plated Prisoner series. As much as I was just saying that I've been meaning to pick up Children of Fallen Gods, I think we are going to go with Glint by Raven Kennedy. I told myself I was going to read the first 2 books before the year's over, so I think I need to take this opportunity to put it on my November TBR so I can ensure I actually read it this month. And the 6th book just recently came out, so if I like this book, I can binge the next 4 books, which I think the 6th book is the final one in the series, if I am recalling correctly. I'm hoping I love this, but I've seen very mixed reviews for this series, so I feel like I'm either going to love it or hate it. And so I guess only time will tell. So these are our 6 books for the month of November. I know I said this last month, but I am so excited to read these. I honestly think my November TBR is better than my October TBR, but I guess we will see if that is true at the end of November. So just to recap the books for this month, we have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker, fantasy romance book with dragons. This is an anticipated 5-star book for me. And we have The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, which is a epic fantasy book with a older female lead who is a pirate. And we have Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is the 4th book in the Red Rising saga, which is a sci-fi series that has quickly become my favorite series of all time. 4th, we have Court of Blood and Bindings, which is a steamy fae fantasy romance book. Then we have Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which is a horror thriller book, which I believe is about a haunted house. Last but not least, we have Glint by Raven Kennedy, which is the 2nd book in the Plated Prisoner series that is dark fantasy romance and a King Midas retelling. So we will probably see these in a reading vlog or a reading wrap up. I'm sure I'm going to have lots of thoughts on all of these, but I am super duper excited. I have 2 more books that I really want to read in November. I don't have them on my cart because they haven't released yet. The first book is The Tempest of Wrath and Vengeance, which is the 3rd and final book in the Legacy series by Melissa K. Roerich. This comes out on October 31st, and I cannot wait. I need to know what's going to happen and how the story is going to end. I have so many questions that I am hoping gets answered in this final book, and I just cannot wait. I'm going to pick it up on release day so I can read it right away. And the second book is The Songbird and Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the 3rd book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I really enjoyed the first 2 books, so I'm excited to pick up the 3rd one. The 3rd book does follow different characters than the first 2 books. Curious to see how I will like those characters, and I'm very curious to see if Oriah and Rain will be featured in this book at all. So I'm hoping for the best, but I have no idea what to expect going into that book. But I am very excited. So hopefully we can finish these 6 books in November along with those 2 new releases. And I am just so hyped for this month of reading. I wish I could read faster so I could get through more books. But let me know down in the comments below what's on your November TBR, or what books are you looking forward to reading, and if you have read any of these books and your thoughts on them. Anyways, that is all for our November TBR. Thank you so much for watching and joining me for this video. I appreciate you so much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. I love you. Bye.